Polls about to close in more than 20 states, including the all-important Pennsylvania, plus other key states like Michigan. The full list, you can see it right there on the right side of your screen. We're going to be getting into all that as well. Also, Rick Unger of the nationally syndicated radio show, The Rick Unger Show, will be joining us as well. But first, let's get to Tom Steyer. The billionaire environmentalist, he ran for president, as many remember, the Democratic primary this year. All right, Rick, I'm sorry. Give me an idea from your idea, Tom, where you see the early numbers and the razor-thin margin in Florida. I know that none of these were critical states, Georgia or Florida, for a Biden path to 270. But do you have any sense? I mean, when you look, for example, even at Miami-Dade, Hillary did better than Joe Biden did this time around. Any reasons to have concerns at this point, or are you still cautiously optimistic?
Well, I am optimistic, Rich, and I'll tell you why. I'm optimistic that young people are going to turn out in record numbers this year, that they're going to split about 2-to-1 for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that they are going to be the swing factor in this race. I have been talking to them. Next Gen, which I started 8 years ago, has been trying to organize and energize and empower young people. And this is the year where they turn out. People under 35 are 40% of the possible electorate. And they're very excited about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They love his climate action. And I believe they're going to show up across the country and deliver 5 million plus net votes to the Biden-Harris ticket compared to what happened to Mrs. Clinton in 2016. So I believe young people are the story of tonight, and that it's a big climate story because they really trust Joe Biden's heart on this, that he understands it, that he's going to deal with our climate crisis, and they're showing up to support him and Kamala Harris as a result.
In terms of messaging and in terms of closing argument, I get to see the raw feeds, and Tom, you saw the packed crowds. Don't have to explain the irresponsibility of maskless people shoulder to shoulder. In fact, I did the Stanford study, which projected that 30,000 people probably contracted COVID, and 700 may even lose their lives because of those rallies. But you contrasted that in the last week to people in cars and isolated with empty backdrops for Biden. I've heard, at least within the campaign, they're not second-guessing themselves, but they're concerned that that closing argument, optically at least, might not have played as well. Was there any way around it?
I don't think so. Look, Joe Biden presents the complete opposite of Donald Trump. He's compassionate, he's experienced, he believes in science, and he cares about the American people. And I think that's the argument, honest to God, Rich, that people are going to take with him. That here is a team of Biden and Harris, of experienced people who really care, and we need this so badly. I mean, Joe Biden's been saying this is a fight for the soul of America for over a year, and my goodness, at the end of the day, this is a fight for, are we going to go with true American values, or are we going to go along with this failed experiment of the Trump Republican administration that's failed, and they don't even have a plan going forward? I think that the takeaway message on this is super strong. Hugest difference ever between candidates, most at stake ever in America. And I think Americans are going to show up, especially young Americans, as I said, and really put it on the line for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because that's the right thing to do in their mind. And I think they're right.
All right, Tom, give me first guesses for me. Give me a state that might surprise us that you think, when the counting's done, is going to be in the Biden ledger that historically isn't.
Well, I think, if you look at those 3 states that everybody was counting on as such a big deal, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, we're going to clearly win some of those. But I think it's bigger than this, Rich. I think we're going to see this spread across the country, that in fact, what's been going on, this isn't just tonight. This isn't just about November 3rd, 2020. It's more than the 4 years. Look, at Next Gen, we've been working with young people to get them to understand how important they are and how important their vote is. And so that means it's going to show up in Texas like crazy. It means it's going to show up in Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Midwest. It's going to show up in every state, because the young people in this country are fed up. And today they show up in numbers to deliver the message that it's time to turn the page on this failed Republican experiment, that we really need a change, a dramatic change. And that is what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are offering. And it's going to show up in every state. And you're going to be really surprised at the end of the day in states that you thought were the Republican strongholds, that people are turning out in record numbers.
So this is getting way ahead of myself, but let's say you're right. At the end of the night, Biden wins, and if not a mandate, he wins, so that there's an acknowledgement. We don't have to go through rigmarole for the next 2 weeks. If he tries to, as he says, bring the country together and bring the Republican Party along with him, and obviously you ran on a very progressive agenda, where is the Democratic Party? Do you accept that this is a complicated hand that Biden would have been dealt here, not only a pandemic, but all the economic consequences around it? Or does he have to run as a progressive from day one, from a transition to who he populates his cabinet with, to his policies? What would you expect of what this President-elect Biden would be inheriting and what he could do or have to do in your eyes?
Well, let me say this. Look, I think the moment has found the right person and the right team. Joe Biden has said he is intent on pulling this country together and that he cares about every American, not just Democratic voters. And I take him at his word. And I can tell you that his climate policy is aggressive. It is necessary, it is responsible, but it's aggressive, and I believe he has it in his heart. And I believe Democrats have lined up behind him, not just because they want to get rid of Donald Trump, but because they believe in him, and they believe in his pick of Kamala Harris, and they believe that we're going to get important, transformative things done together. That's what he's run on. That's what he's stuck to his guns this whole way, and that's what I believe he's going to deliver. And I think Kamala Harris is the beginning of that, and he's going to deliver this, exactly as he promised.
So, Tom, I got Chris Shays, a former congressman from Connecticut, with me, and he has got a question for you.
Two questions.
Two?
Well, first off, thank you for what you've done over the last few years. You are a real hero, so thank you. I'd love to know, first off, assuming that Joe Biden has done 90% right in his campaign, what are one or two or three things that you wish he had done that he didn't do?
Look, actually, I think he's run a very disciplined, smart, value-driven campaign. And for all the people who are complaining about this campaign, I think he really came as himself. I think the most important thing that a candidate can do is to try and be authentic and genuine and let the American people understand. And if there's anything that he's done, it's that. It's been the open, compassionate person that he really is. So, I don't really look back with any regrets. I give these guys great credit for sticking to their guns, for being value-driven, for showing their heart, and for really pulling together the big tent that I think is supporting them. And particularly, Chris, in May, Joe Biden had a minus 22 approval rating from young voters. In October, it was plus 23. They're doing something really right. And a lot of that was climate. And a lot of that was young voters learning. And next gen, we worked our tails off to try and educate them about who Joe Biden and Kamala Harris really are and what they really stand for. And I think actually, I'm not someone who likes to look back and regret. I want to look back and be proud of what's happened right up to this second.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, Tom, I hope your projections are right, and we will find out, I think, tonight. But anyway, I appreciate the time, and as always, don't be a stranger. Tom Steyer, thank you so much.
Rich, thank you so much for having me.
All right, the aforementioned Rick Unger, and I can't make fun that his shows with the same name since I have also Egomania running wild.
Very creative,
yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, tell me from what you've seen, what you think so far.
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a story building that we need to start paying attention to, and that's in Ohio. Before I came out, I was looking at some of the counties in northeastern Ohio. The Biden vote is running so much stronger than the Clinton vote did there. It's really got my attention. Florida is pretty much what I expected. It's going to stay close. I think at the end of the night, we're probably going to see a Trump win there. Georgia has been my pick all week long as the big surprise that I think will fly into the Biden column.
What do you think changed minds? I mean,
In
you
Georgia?
spoke to. Well, no, I'm even talking nationally. I mean, we didn't have. To me, it was so. I would love to have gotten in the head of people who were undecided going into this week. I mean, where have you lived? Like you pick a side at this point. But nonetheless, people broke late in some circumstances. Like, what do you think was the dividing line? Was it COVID? Was it?
Again, I think it's going to turn out Ohio may answer your question the best. I actually, oddly enough, in 2016, I was in Youngstown, Ohio. I was covering it for Sirius XM radio. And to see what happened there, I was actually sitting there with the mayor of Youngstown, and our mouths were dropping because we're seeing this massive Trump vote. We're going, that can't happen.
And if we could, Rick, set the stage, because Youngstown was one of those classic Rust Belt cities.
Absolutely.
It used to be Democrat year after year because it was union jobs, and then something changed, and they felt they were left behind.
Is they felt, yes, they felt left behind. They felt that the Democrats, after all these years, had sold them out, and they had had enough, and they saw a change candidate in Trump. And actually, to be precise, Youngstown itself pretty much stayed blue, but Mahoney County, which contained Youngstown, that went Trump, and it shocked us. I have stayed in very close touch with the area ever since then, and you could see it starting to change. I talked to the union leaders a lot, the local presidents. They were seeing the change on the floors of their factory. They felt sold out. Now, Youngstown in particular, because the Lordstown plant, where Trump had showed up and said, don't sell your house, it's going to be fine. Well, it wasn't fine. It shut down. So you had a problem there. But what I'm seeing right now may tell you the story. Northeastern Ohio is my favorite bellwether in the country for a lot of reasons. And to see the vote coming in Akron, in Cleveland, in the Youngstown area, I'm a little bit, if it holds up, I'm a little bit stunned, and that could be the story of everything.
And there's two different schools of thought. I'm curious. Some said, well, Joe Biden's a much more relatable person to this population, like he is to the Scranton population, et cetera, than Hillary Clinton ever was. Or it's that at a certain point, I always said as a New Yorker, whenever they showed people in Celebrity Row on the Jumbotron, almost everybody got a hand. Donald Trump, whether it was at the U.S. Open, a Knick game, would be booed lustily for my entire life. And that's why we all knew he was a con artist and a hustler, but the rest of the country didn't catch on because they knew him from The Apprentice.
Right.
Is it possible that after 4 years, people know that they were conned too?
It would be hard for me to say it's not possible because I can't understand anybody who hasn't caught on. People haven't. I realize there are people out there who are voting for him, but is it possible? Of course it's possible. We sitting here, we all want to believe that Americans remain quasi-rational. How could you not see it?
But the public loves celebrities.
They do.
If Rock, if
And
the
they
Rock,
love drama.
If The Rock ran for president, he would get 30,000 people listening to him. He'd have to say some unusual things, but he would get that group.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. They love celebrities. They love the drama. Donald Trump is nothing if he's not drama. Right. And they like the entertainment.
But you know what I never got, guys, was this. The American public, I don't care if you're red, blue, whatever shade you identify, people don't like being told what to do. They want to make up their own mind. And to me, at least, the idea of telling people that if they lost somebody to COVID, it didn't matter. Or that, I'm going to decide when your vote's going to count or not, and I'll decide when we're going to end the mail-in voting. To me, the same people who said you're not going to restrict my right to bear arms or whatever are the same people to say, wait a minute, this is America. Since when do you decide when I get to vote?
You have to make a distinction there because there is a part of the population who hears Donald Trump speak that way and they just get such a big kick out of it.
Yeah,
they
think
it's fabulous. And then there are the people you're talking about, and the people you're talking about will probably decide this election.
It's almost like World Wrestling.
Yes.
People know it's a fraud.
Right.
But they just love it, and they love yelling.
Except it's not a fraud. I mean, it's a fraud, but it's real life.
Yeah.
Listen, the amount of people I know, and you guys probably know in your own circles, who say, I can't stand the guy, but I don't want my taxes going up or whatever. And I'm saying, you did listen to the ad. And I know how well you're doing. You're not making more than $400K a year. I've gone to some of them. But yet, that was the stumbling block for them to, they won't put the Trump sticker on the bumper,
Right.
but they weren't ready to run away from. I'm sorry. Let's bring in Andrew Whitman right now, because Andrew, you've got some calls for us. And as we mentioned before, a bunch of states just closed their polls about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, things are starting to happen pretty quickly. Let's go to some results in favor of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to win in South Carolina and their 9 electoral votes. We also have a result for him out of Oklahoma with their 7 electoral votes. Alabama has come in for Donald Trump with 9 electoral votes. Next door to Mississippi, it's 6 electoral votes. And we will also add Tennessee and their 11 electoral votes. We also have some results coming in for Joe Biden from our viewing area, Connecticut, and its electoral votes, 7 electoral votes, not 9. We'll move on to from there to New Jersey, 14 electoral votes for Joe Biden out of the Garden State. Delaware, the former vice president, has won his home state and its 3 electoral votes. The state of Illinois, and 20 electoral votes going to Joe Biden, and the District of Columbia as well. Let's bring that to our electoral vote total, and we see that we are at Trump 68, Biden 63. One other, we'll come back here. We just got an update from the Associated Press. We didn't have enough time to build our graphics, but Maryland to Joe Biden and the state of Rhode Island to Joe Biden. So he's now at 77 electoral votes. A couple of other bits of business. I want to take you to the Senate race in New Jersey, where Cory Booker has been reelected. That is a hold for the Democrats. And then 2 other bits of news for you. First, we just got early voting out of Pennsylvania. That is 85 to 14 in favor of Biden. That is only 110,000 votes, very, very, very early in Pennsylvania. And starting to get hints that a call in Florida may be coming momentarily. Let me go back and check the numbers, Rich, and we'll toss it back to you.
And Andrew, just one thing, as mentioned before by Rick, some of the early numbers out of Ohio, they seem to be trending Biden, right?
Yeah, I've been getting some indications, yes, although from what I understood, some of the vote totals coming out of the Cleveland area were a little lower than had been anticipated, but it seems as though Biden has been doing better across the state, not just in urban areas. And I will say that of all of the states in the final week, 2 weeks of this election, Georgia and Ohio, Ohio moved big time towards Trump and then slowly started moving back in the final days of the campaign. We'll see if that momentum continued in Ohio through Election Day.
Okay. Andrew, thank you. And, from a general sense, again, if you folks are tuning in a little bit later, form is holding so far. The states that you knew before the night, almost for sure were going to go red have, and the states that you knew that were going to go blue were as well. There are far more paths to 270 and beyond for Joe Biden than there are for Donald Trump. Florida is a key for Trump. They ran I think it was 66,000 different permutations, did some of the Obama folks, and they couldn't find one where Trump can win if he doesn't carry Florida. At this point, there's about a percent point, but that's a lot when you factor in the total vote in Florida, and they're still doing a lot more to the panhandle, which you think will go red. It looks like it is going to go the way of Donald Trump, which was key for him. Now the question is going to be the neighbor to the north. What happens to Georgia? And also a little above that, what happens to North Carolina? Those will be really interesting. And as mentioned before by Rick, Ohio, if Ohio goes the way of Biden, that further expands his map and it makes it really hard for Trump, because one would think if Ohio is going to go Biden's way, so would Michigan, so would Wisconsin. The polling at least showed much bigger margin than the Buckeye State in terms of Biden's favor. So again, very early, but that will be a tell, as they say, for where things can go. And obviously, we should be learning about Arizona also tonight, which would be significantly important for how the map plays out. Rick, we were talking before Andrew did the numbers, about the numbers and about the economics and the pocketbook. And in exit polling, a lot of people said the economy was their number one issue. And I saw some people on other networks intuitively saying, well, that's good for Trump. Possibly. But I think in a pandemic where people have said, wait a minute, where's my stimulus check? I didn't do something wrong. They shut down my restaurant. They shut down my company. It's not my choice to be sitting at home right now. It's a pandemic. I got nowhere to go. The hotel shut down, whatever. And I believe that, and I've said this with Chris before he got here, it was political malpractice for Trump, who doesn't care about deficits, not to ram through a package and take credit for it. As a way to say, here's a check right before you go vote.
He figured it out just much too late. Much too late. I'll tell you what, though, when people come out in exit polls and say the economy, there's an old joke in television that if you call somebody up and say, are you a supporter of public TV? They will always say yes. Now, if you ask them what their favorite show is, they'll have nothing to say because they've never watched public TV. It's the same thing. People come out of voting in exit polls and they are trained to say, if they don't want to look stupid, the economy is my number one issue. I don't believe them. Their number one issue this year is COVID. It's COVID, period. They may not want to cop to it because they don't want to look afraid.
Yep.
But it is one of those questions that you always get that answer, and I don't believe them.
Interesting.
What's it like on election night? You've done all the campaigning you can do, right? You're sitting back. There's no more calls to make, no more checks to try and drag out of people here. There's no more stumping anymore. I know you've always told me you feel for the people who knocked on doors for you. You feel for the people who work the phones, your staff and all the rest. Is it a helpless feeling, though, as you're waiting for the returns?
It just depends whether you think you're going to win or lose. And you usually know about 2 weeks before. I had a race for mayor in Stamford that I lost. And I was running against my best friend, Tom Steyer, who became mayor. And we had 26 debates. 26 debates, Jesus. And we were friends. I knew 2 weeks before, because 2 weeks before, people saying, good luck, I hope you win, this kind. I noticed them saying, all the best. They didn't say, I hope you win. And you can tell on election day when you go and vote, if people don't look up at you the same way, you know. And when I lost in 08, I thought I was still going to win because I was getting a better response. And I lost in 08 when Obama was running. And there were a whole group of new voters. And the Democrats were smart. They said, if you split your ticket, Obama loses, and so on. So at any rate, but I knew that morning that I was in trouble because people didn't look at me the same way. And when I stood in the line, they said, you know, they were friendly, but they didn't say, I hope you win.
Yeah.
So on election day, I didn't campaign ever. I figured if I hadn't done my job by election day, forget it. So I would go and thank all my supporters. And I actually enjoyed my day.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed my day. And what you know is, in my first election in 74, when I was running for the State House, one of my supporters ran, and that was just North Stamford that I represented, Connecticut. And he ran in and said, you're winning, you're winning. And I got all excited, and he had the first district. And I lost this district by about 100 votes. And I wanted to punch him in the stomach. But he knew, because he was experienced, that I should have lost it by 200, and I lost it by 100. Right. And so right now, they're starting to get feelings about how they're doing just based on what they expected versus what.
And, again, it looks like that blue wall, it's early, but the early numbers out of Michigan and Ohio that are coming in, and we already know Illinois, but you're a radio guy. Mark Levin was supposed to have the president on. The president canceled the appearance. How much do these guys know before even the networks know from their guys on the ground that they're in trouble?
A lot more. A lot more.
Yeah.
Just like you knew.
Yeah.
They know. I mean, they've got field operations in every state that is of any value. Some of the states they've pulled out, they don't have them. They have a pretty good idea.
They call
what's
up
going
before
on.
They know right away, and they immediately call up, the headquarters.
Yeah.
And even in my small little outfit, we had about 10 people manning phones,
Although there are some hints you get. One of Trump's top political operatives, I will not say his name, but he is a friend of mine. And he was on Twitter this afternoon. And I thought, what are you doing on Twitter? You should be way too busy
Yeah.
going over numbers from various states. Why are you on
Why
Twitter?
was he?
I didn't ask him. I didn't want to go there, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
So what does that say to you?
It says that he didn't have much to do, and if he didn't have much to do,
Interesting.
that's not a good sign for him.
Interesting. Interesting.
If oh, you guys want to hit break? All right, we come back. I want to go through some of the scenarios how, if the night plays out, what the president may or may not do, and how some of the various players may or may not act. When we come back, we'll get into that. Plus, the phone lines are jammed. I promise I'm going to get to your phone calls as well with the guys here. Andrew's starting to get some more numbers as well. A lot to get to. We're in ending the first act of what will be an interesting play tonight for American history. We'll have much more election coverage after this.